All I could think about today was how there's a literal snowstorm, freeze storm in Texas, and people are really struggling because the electricity went out, all their power went out, any water heating, any sort of way of life has gotten cut out. And Ted Cruz thought this would be the optimal time to hop on a plane with his family and go on vacation.
Andiamo, andiamo, andiamo. I think it's hilarious that for some reason, I don't know why, like politicians are like, oh, like we're so above this, like no one will know. Everybody, like we got this. We're gonna keep this under wraps, and they'll leave. Like it happened in Ontario as well, where the finance minister went, and this was like right when after Christmas they were like everybody is going under like the most stay at home order, like drama level 100, and the finance minister left on a vacation to the Caribbean for 2 weeks.
I think, like, what an optimal time. You know what I mean? Like,
I'm like, "Are you confused?" Like, I'm confused for you. Like, I don't understand why you think that there's like two things that I'm confused about. One, why when your own government, like you are part of the government, your team is like everybody stay home. You're like stay home to pack before my flight? Like when should I stay home? And two, when everybody is like stay home, stay home, stay home, don't go to the grocery store, that people in general are like don't go to the grocery store because I'll be on my flight to a warm place in the world.
well,
Bye.
I don't know about you, but I know that when I go to plan my vacations, I check to see if there's a world crisis first. If there isn't a world crisis, I don't want to travel.
I'm done.
I would rather, you know, stay home like I should in the midst of a global pandemic, let alone
Yeah.
like a state specific emergency, like I really just do you take Visa? Do you take traveler's points?
Do you take traveler's checks? Like, truly, do you take traveler's checks? Like, that statement from my life has never been more relevant than right now. Like, do you take traveler's checks? Because nobody from my bank is working and going into the bank right now because it's at a stay-at-home order, but I needed to travel to Mexico. So do you take traveler's checks? Because I couldn't actually get any money.
We in our high school grad trip, this was in grade 12, so our last year, we went on a grad trip to what was it, Punta Cana?
Yeah.
I'm not gonna go into the details, but something happened and Sharini had to pay the hotel. And one of the one of the
I
people
literally
I
didn't
feel like
even I had to like
we gave
pay
this
to
story.
like I had to pay to like leave. Like I had to pay to like leave. I was like, I need to go. Like
Oh,
I
yeah.
like
I don't know why in
yeah.
that moment I suddenly was like, "Yep, my name is, Nadine Hafar. I have a JD from God knows what university. I am representing Tarini Sharma. Thanks so much for asking." Because I, like, lawyered up all of a sudden with my, like, imaginary degree. But there was one of the, like, people from the company that we had traveled with,
Gosh,
like,
literally so stupid.
so unprofessional, but he, like I didn't know, like, what his purpose was in the
I
conversation.
didn't know what any of their purposes
I I
was. Like
I
I had
guess
no
he was mediating the conversation between you and the hotel. He goes, "Okay, so you owe them X amount of money." And Sharini's
I
standing,
literally was like, no.
and then all of a sudden she goes, "Do they take traveler's checks?"
I was like, I have no money. First of all, I'm like 50, I'm 16. Like, what money do I have? Second of all, I literally was like, sir, I need to get on this bus to get to the airport to get on my flight. Like, I've got to go. I can't stay. They
So
didn't
traveler's
understand.
checks or nothing really is like what we're
I
saying.
was like, do you take this? Because this is literally the only currency I have aside from like a limb, and I'm not going to pay that. So, what do you want from me?
Didn't he yell at you too?
Everyone was like yelling at me and at Steph because Steph was also in the situation, but she was just talking to somebody else. We were all in this situation, and except you. I don't know what you were doing, but
Yeah, I don't know what I was doing.
but yeah, Steph was also in the situation. I was in the situation, and everyone was yelling because someone was like, "We're gonna miss this flight. You're gonna have to stay here." Or somebody else was like, "Pay me." I was like, "I don't
I
know.
don't know what's
I
going
need to get
on.
home in one piece." I made it.
Yeah,
That's
well,
not the point. I was traveling during not a pandemic.
you weren't? What are you
I
talking
know,
about?
so weird. I will cherish my time in Punta Cana in the garbage where it belongs. Um, and that's where everybody who's traveling right now should also cherish their memories because you're not supposed to be traveling anywhere.
I feel like outside of politicians, though, like influencers are traveling. Everybody's going to Tulum.
I
Like there's
know. Why is there
we were
such a fascination with Tulum
I
right
don't
now?
know what's happening, but like we were talking about this, and there are two types of travelers in the pandemic. The first type are people who look like they've been sponsored by itravel2000.com and they're
I'm
posting their pictures everywhere.
And they're
And
like,
then
literally, I like know this person who was traveling, and he put every step of his like every minute of his vacation on Instagram. And you know that SpongeBob meme where it's like SpongeBob like has his hand on his hips and he's like no no no, like and the I'm like I don't, it doesn't make any sense. But like the caption is like in caps and small, in caps and small.
yeah.
Um literally he posted that, and he was traveling, and in that like meme whatever it was like in quotation essential travel only. I was like, no, like this is not like a SpongeBob made up like meme. Like this is like real life. Like it is essential travel only.
Oh
But like,
my God. Well,
and
the other
he was literally the one who was like, look at me, like like I'm traveling. Like I was born to travel at this exact moment in time.
well, okay, I cannot with this whoever the hell this person is. Um, but there are those types of people. Then the other type is are those who like go into a witness protection program when they
Yeah,
travel because they don't want
literally.
anyone to know that they are secretly traveling during
They're like,
a
we're
global.
traveling, but I actually like got a passport from the black market for this travel. Like I'm traveling to Mexico, but I got a face transplant to be able to go.
Well, speaking of the Ontario finance minister, he like I think he recorded a video or something, but he like had it all pre-set up
Dead.
so that he didn't look like he was on vacation.
I just don't get it because you and I were also talking about how the borders have not been closed and why haven't they been closed?
Yeah.
Because like there needs to be, I feel like a more strict um enforcement of this like stay at home, which like is really stupid because I've said this so often, but if you were going to do something during the pandemic that you're not supposed to do, like go out or do whatever, you would find a way to do it regardless of what the rules were. Like you would find a way to break that rule regardless of what it was.
Yeah.
But I just feel like not closing borders is such a like it would be like the first thing that came to mind to be like, oh, okay, pandemic, stay at home, emergency order, like, cool. We're closing borders. Like, you're not allowed to travel. You're not allowed to go anywhere. But people just, and by people, I mean the government, just like
Yeah.
isn't and didn't do that. And I think like Australia, I think is like doing really well with the pandemic. And that's the first thing that they did and have continued to do. And they're living like normal over there. Like, they have like no stay at home orders and stuff anymore at all because they literally closed their borders and they were good.
This is something that I really don't understand because even at the federal level of our government, like Trudeau is not he's not closing borders either. Like it's
Yeah.
not within like Ontario specifically, like it's
Yeah.
a whole country thing. Like we're still open and we still have flights, which I don't understand. Especially when we went into like a state of emergency. I was watching the news and I remember thinking, "Oh my God, how terrifying. State of emergency." I'm hunkering down. I'm locking my doors. I'm not leaving my room. But you could still travel to like wherever your heart desired.
Yeah, like technically as long as you have a negative COVID test, you can travel wherever, which is I feel like one of the biggest things that like people are potentially missing about not traveling or not even traveling to like another part of the world, but travel not even traveling like intercity or whatever is even though you may not have it, like you could be carrying it, which will pass it on. And even if you don't get it personally and pass it on, that's not the only way in which you can spread it, right? Like you can still spread it if you carry it and then you give it to somebody else whose body maybe can't fight it. And
Yeah.
then they will get sick and then they'll pass it on and da 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 da. But I feel like there's a lack of I don't know if it's understanding or like a lack of care because I've spoken to quite a few people where they're like, yeah, but like after a point, like I just don't care. Like I don't have it, I'm fine. And you're like, okay, but that's only like half of it. But it's
Yeah.
really hard to make people listen when the administration that's trying to enforce this is like, I'm enforcing this from my private flight to the Caribbean.
Yeah,
Thank
I'm
you.
enforcing this from a green screen in the Caribbean.
Yeah,
Thanks so much, everyone. Stay safe and stay at
stay
home.
home. Like,
No, it's stupid.
it's also really irresponsible because a lot of like the places that people are traveling to, like Mexico, Tulum, we were talking about, their economy thrives on it's a much smaller economy,
Yeah.
and it thrives on tourism, and so people don't have the option to be like, no, I'm gonna stay home. They have to go and they have to work, and they if you're like at a bar, at a restaurant, at a club, which like is what's happening in Mexico, people have to be there and they have to interact. So like you're also putting those much more vulnerable people and economies at stake or
Yeah.
at risk because they can't say no. Like that's what their economy depends on. Like people who do like those types of jobs are usually like lesser paid. They can't like take time off. Like they can't put those things in place that you might be able to.
Yeah. It's also just extremely like what a privileged thing to be like, you know what? I need a break. I'm gonna tap out of this for a little minute and
Yeah.
go to a resort on the beach. Like
Yeah.
it's a global crisis, and even though we're fortunate enough not to have it or know someone who directly has it, you just have to do your due diligence and just stay at home.
Exactly. Like it truly is like such a privilege to just be like, I need a break. Like I need to go.
I need to go. Like I've got places to
I've got
be.
places to be. I've got things to do. I've got people to see, even though
But
everybody's supposed to be staying at home.
but I know like this is also something that we talk about. It's so hard, especially when it was like around the holidays, people were traveling overseas to be with their family. That I get. Like I do get, but I'm still conflicted
Yeah.
because you are putting yourself and others at a higher risk because
Yeah.
you are traveling overseas and you're going in an airplane, which is like even in pre-COVID times, that was like the
Yeah.
place to get sick. Was in
No, totally. It was something that like I personally thought about so much because um earlier on in the summer my grandma had passed away and she obviously passed away in India. And so my mom and I were like, "Oh, like should we go to India?" Like literally we were like, "Should we go to India?" But it would have just not been a good decision because for all of the reasons we already talked about, and like we would have to go there and we would have to quarantine, and then like we would have to quarantine in like institutionalized quarantine and at home, and we would be going to like India is like very much Delhi is very much like a hub of the coronavirus, especially at that time. So it would have made absolutely no sense to go. And in the summer, actually, Canada and like Ontario was doing fairly well, like outside of literally downtown Toronto, but like everywhere else was doing fairly okay.
Mhm.
But yeah, one of the things that we did was have my grandpa come over.
Yeah.
But I remember when he came, we didn't see anybody. Like we literally stayed at home. Like I think maybe saw you.
Yeah. I remember.
I don't even remember if I saw you.
I think we saw each other once, but even then it's not I didn't even see your grandpa. It's not even like I was
Yeah, like we literally, I think we were in the car or something together.
Yeah.
Um, because he was there. And yeah, so it's really hard. But like a big part of why we got him to come here is because one, my grandma had just passed away.
Yeah.
He was like going to be all alone. And instead of us going there and not even being able to stay for as long because we'd have to rush back for work and blah, blah, blah. And we would be going from like a fairly safe place to a very unsafe place in terms of COVID. It made more sense for him to come here. And like, you know, thankfully when you like get on a flight in India, they're like very strict. They make you wear like the PPE and like the mask and the face
Good.
shield and like everything, which is awesome. Yeah, which is really good. But it was a risk for all of us too. Like he's not like young. He's 87 years old. Like it obviously, I know, touch wood. It obviously was a risk. But I think in those like, I don't know, maybe it's like the pot calling the kettle black, but like I don't know, maybe it's like maybe it's a hypocritical thing of me to say like, oh, you know, it's fine to do that, but it's not fine for you to travel to Mexico. But I think it's different to travel for like an actual reason versus like, oh, like I just need to get away from the winter for a little bit. You know what I
Well,
mean?
those are there are actual people who what are they called? Snowbirds?
Yeah, snowbirds. Exactly.
Where they literally travel. They're like, winter, I'm gonna take this elsewhere. I'm
Yeah.
literally gonna travel and get out of here.
Yeah. And I think that was a big part at the beginning too, like when coronavirus hit, because it was in March of last year, which is like wild to think that it's been one whole calendar year. Um, it was they were saying that a big part of why it was spreading so fast as well was because there were a lot of snowbirds that were coming back because it was like March, it was starting to get nicer. And that's like around the time that they like mid-March was around the time that they would start coming back, and like March, April, May, etc. Um, but it's just wild to me that like it's been a whole year and we're still having what feels like the same conversations.
Yeah. What is non-essential travel? I feel like our government has picked these broad terms
Yeah.
has never not has never, but like doesn't I guess like anything relating to the pandemic or anything that I'm supposed to do or not supposed to do, I want it laid out for me in the most black and white way that there's no room for interpretation. Like this is what it is. This is what it is, and
This
this
is
is
what it
how.
is, and this is how we do. Literally another gem from our trip in high school. That trip was truly a trip of a lifetime. As in,
The
I'll
best
never.
part of this, and I'm
know,
100% sure,
know,
you know what I'm
I,
gonna say.
I
The
know.
best part of this, and I'm pretty sure we have brought it up on the podcast before, is that they asked Chirini to be part of a promotional video, like
Which in hindsight I
advertising
should have
for.
charged for, because even a few years later, somebody from our high school went. Do you remember this?
No.
Went to their office and the video of me was playing in their lobby. First of all, because I did such a good job hyping them up, because I'm fake. I'm fake AF. And they literally were playing it like 2 years after I went on the trip, after I had like fully like tried to just like get rid of it from my memory.
Disassociate.
Literally disassociate myself from them and that trip. And yeah, I actually should like sue them or something. I remember the girl who asked me to do it, who is like now the complete opposite of what that company stands for. She actually said, she was like, oh, like this was so good, like they should pay you. In that moment I should have known.
You should have bargained. I'm surprised, like, you as the
I
bargaining queen
know.
weren't like, yes, I take cash.
I
Direct
take
deposit
traveler's
is not.
checks.
I take travelers. If you want to make it out to, that's Tarini Sharma.
Yeah, I will spell it out for you. I'm done.
Do you want to pay my bill for that I apparently owe this hotel to leave? Like, they were
Yeah.
holding me hostage.
Literally the security people are like, you're not allowed to go. I'm like, I have to go. I can't stay. I
I
don't know if you
forgot.
understand. I cannot stay.
I actually forgot that that they were like, you're not leaving until you pay us.
No, they literally were like, we're gonna handcuff you to me and Steph. I was like, what is happening? Like, no. I was like, you're literally hotel security. Like, whatever. That is truly like a story for another never. It's the story for another lifetime when I forget about this trip and accidentally do it again in my next lifetime.
That's wild. That's really wild.
It was a wild time indeed, truly. But no, I think what was your original question?
Yeah, we really
What
trailed off.
does like non-essential or essential
Yeah.
travel mean? I'm dead. I think
Yeah.
I don't know how we got back to this trip. I think
It will always
I know it will always
go back to that
it
trip.
will-
Not that that trip was like
that great.
incredible. Not that
Yeah.
it was like mind-blowing, amazing. Like, Tarini and I have gotten into one fight in our lives, and it actually happened on that trip. So it's not, and not,
And it wasn't even because of the
it
other
wasn't, yeah. Like, I can't roll my eyes any farther
back.
back.
I know.
Anyways, that's our grad trip experience, but I'm looking at what non-essential travel is.
I think non-essential travel just means if you could just do without it, like do without it. Like if it's not food, if it's not medicine, but then it also like that doesn't make sense to me, which is why I think there's so much up for interpretation because and then people start doing things and then it's like, oh, you're breaking the rules because everyone's like, oh, stay at home order, but the malls are open, but stay at home, but dining is open, but stay at home. It's like, what? Like, I literally don't understand. Do you want me to stay at home or do you want me to go to the mall? Like, what do you want me to do?
Just tell me, like, just tell me what you want me to do.
Just
but, like, don't confuse me. I think like that's really the vibe. Don't confuse.
I remember when like the order, like the one in December, and then there was another follow-up in like January came out. And everyone was laughing because they were like, the first stay-at-home order was like, stay at home, exclamation. The second one was like, stay at home, exclamation, exclamation, angry emoji face, angry emoji face. I was like, yeah, like that's literally what it was. Like everyone was like, stay at home emergency. Oh my God. Wait, what's the difference though? Like literally. And I also feel like that adds to this like fatigue, this COVID fatigue that makes people want to be like, okay, well, F it. I'm just going to go out because the government itself like doesn't even know what they're doing.
Which like is fair. I mean, we've never in our modern history come across something like this, like something, this drastic and just spans across the entire world. So I'm not expecting our government officials to have all the answers or to know exactly what we're going to do. I'm just looking for like clear cut instructions on what the hell I should and shouldn't be doing and whether or not people can travel or not. Because like, it's exactly like you said. We can talk about these people who travel to Mexico and God knows where they're getting sponsored to go.
Yeah, literally.
But at the end of the day, like, if they're not being stopped at the border and they're still able to purchase a travel ticket, like how much can you really blame them for traveling?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think it's just hard because there needs to be like a level of understanding that when you travel, like it's kind of what I already said, but like it impacts other people almost more than it impacts you. Like, of course, it impacts you the most if you, God forbid, who generally, God forbid, get COVID while you're traveling. But I think it's also so scary because COVID has in and of itself impacted the most vulnerable and the most marginalized the hardest, whether that's because of money, whether that's because of housing, what, like any social service, any social issue of any sort of like privilege, whether that's literally any single social structure, any single privilege. Like if you're at like the marginalized end of that, like you are the one that has been hit the hardest with COVID in general. And so when people act in a way that's like so clearly like you can definitely debate what non-essential, what essential travel means. But if you're somebody who is like so clearly in violation, like obviously this isn't even a debate. This is not travel for you to like go to Mexico and like get drunk over your spring break. It's just irresponsible because you're perpetuating this cycle of like privilege, but also this cycle of like hitting people while they're down. Like, because you're like, those people are already struggling. Those communities are already struggling, which is why when like something like the snowstorm, it's like kind of what we were saying before, but it's like all like a compound effect of like, there's this pandemic happening, which is already hitting those specific pockets of communities the hardest, whether it be marginalized communities of whatever sense. And then, like there's a pandemic that's not being handled very well. Then there's the snowstorm, which I think we can all agree, for the most part at least, that it's like a result of global warming.
Yeah.
The fact that there's literally this massive snowstorm in Texas and like they have literally no idea how to deal with it. They're like, they're like, snow, who is that? And obviously they're like, snow, who is that? But the people that are the way that like it's affected everybody, it's like, I think that what I'm trying to say is like, it's such a snowball effect that when you just like don't do your part, whether it's staying at home, whether it's like whatever, following these guidelines, being respectful to words and of other people, like it just further highlights like these social inequities, I feel like, in our world, in our communities, in countries and government and whatever, because it really feels like people like pay lip service, whether it's politicians, whatever, and then they're like, but now I need like a break. And like I think we were talking about this, but like Aaron and Sarah Foster, who I think we've talked about all the time, like they're super funny, super hilarious. We love them. And they were like, they're all about like pandemic relief and like supporting people through this really hard year. And I know Sarah Foster did something for Christmas, which was really great. It's like literally the only time I have used Amazon, but people like sent her Amazon wish lists for like their kids over Christmas or for food or whatever. And then you could like buy stuff off of Amazon for them and it would get delivered to their house. And I was like, that's amazing. Like, I love using your platform for good. And then they literally just, their whole family up and went to Hawaii. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, what? Like, literally, it's so confusing to me as to like why you think that would be like a good thing to do. And even if you like isolated by yourself with your immediate family and then came together and were isolated, like somebody had to fly that plane, it wasn't a family member who flew that plane, you're like, you had to go and stay somewhere, like you had to get on a flight, like you had to land at an airport, like there's just so, like people had to serve you at the airport, like there's just so many things that I'm like, this was highly irresponsible. And like you could have just gone without having a birthday in Hawaii.
No, I 100% get it. And I find it especially frustrating when, like, I think about like my number one favorite influencer or blogger, whatever you want to call it, Olivia Lopez. She's in Mexico right now. But it's hard when it's not that I don't think she's taking all the necessary
Precautions.
Precautions and safety measurements. And I totally get that this is
safety measurements. Not the safety measures, the measurements.
in centimeters, not
Yeah,
inches.
inches.
Safety measures and etc. But like it sucks because I know that's like where most of her income comes from. But at the end of the day, it's exactly like you said. We have to abide by our due diligence. We have a responsibility. Like you have to, like it's literally your civic duty, and
Yeah.
it's hard to watch people like live their life and create this content in paradise when
Literally create content, like content.
yeah, like literally create content in this like paradise when you and I are struggling with like mental health and the challenge of working from home and just the pandemic fatigue, and that's not even taking into account that like that we haven't thankfully lost anyone due to COVID.
Or
So like
yeah, or
imagine
anything. Like
someone
it hasn't like worsened our housing crisis. It hasn't
exactly
worsened like the fact that like we don't get sick leave or we have dependents that we have to take care of. We work like a frontline job. We have like a minimum wage
exactly
job, a lower paying job, an hourly job, like without benefits. Like there's so many different things. And I feel like as an influencer, even more so, like you are influencing people, like whether it's a product, a way of life, like an act, like you have that responsibility because people are looking up to you. So it's like so frustrating because I do like think Aaron and Sarah Foster are so funny, but I was like, you guys are dumb. Like, what are you doing? And I like literally unfollowed them. I was like, I
no,
can't.
I don't blame you. Well, like what I was saying too is that like we still have our jobs. And like
Yeah.
we still get to make our income, we don't have to, exactly like you said, have to go through the trouble of having to deal with all of the challenges that have come with this pandemic. And so it is extremely frustrating, especially when it's an influencer or a blogger
Yeah.
that you admire and you like, because part of why you follow them isn't like because you think your values align. Like that just sounds
Yeah.
like really intense,
No, I know
but
what you mean.
you admire them.
Yeah.
And
It's like a form of escapism.
exactly. And you like them as a person or whatever person they are on social media. I don't fucking know.
Yeah.
But like, you know what I mean? There is that level of like respect. And so when they do things like this, it's hard to see.
Yeah. It's also like, I just feel like sorry, I'm like moving, but I'm like, no, like you literally have a responsibility. And it's very hard when there's people who have been so gravely impacted by the pandemic and everything that has come with it, whether that be because of the pandemic itself or things that have happened that have been worsened by the pandemic. And it's just hard when literally the state of the entire world is like that and you for some reason think that you're above it, that you
Mhm.
can, like you don't have to follow that rule, that you can do whatever you want
Yep.
despite all of the things going on around the entire world.
Yep. I don't know about you, but if I told people, like I think of people who are part of my everyday, like I think of telling people at work, telling you, telling my family that like, thanks so much. I'm actually gonna go on a quick trip.
Yeah.
I'm going to God knows where. I'll be back. It feels silly.
It feels silly and it's like it feels like
It's not the vibe.
yeah, like you're kind of like okay, like are you lost? Like are you confused? Like we're literally not even allowed to go at this point when people were traveling to Mexico, blah blah blah, blah, like we weren't even allowed to go literally to the mall or a restaurant. But you're like, I'm gonna go to Mexico.
Yeah. What are your thoughts? This like came to mind. We went to the cottage in the summer,
Yeah.
but we didn't travel the border. We just like went on a 2-hour drive.
Yeah.
Is there a difference between people traveling versus us getting a cottage?
Yeah.
I was like,
I was like, you're gonna ask and answer your question. No, go
I
for it.
was going to answer my own question. I guess not. I'm like thinking as I'm speaking, because at the time, like we were part of each other's social bubble, me, you, and Steph. And at the time, we were able to get together within our bubble.
Yeah. And I think that like the time that we were doing it, it was in the summer. Things were open. It wasn't like a high freak, like a high, like it wasn't a peak time for anything because like, you know, when school reopens,
Mhm.
it's a peak time because schools were opening, and then it was Thanksgiving, and then it was Christmas, and then it was New Year's, and like I think that's why they had to like put those orders in place because, and it was flu season like that whole time. So I think those orders had to sort of be put in place because they were like, it's like a very high frequency of getting sick time. Um and we went before that when like things were really starting to open. Like I remember malls were like totally open. Like yeah, you had to wear a mask, but like like you could go out to eat, like you could in the summer, like you could do everything almost.
Yep.
Um and people like there were like up to 50 people allowed inside at a time, like for a gathering. Like there were so many, like the rules were completely different. I feel, well, I mean obviously not night and day different, but like a very large difference between where it is now and what it was then. And plus it's not like we were like traveling to the States or like you know what I mean? It's not like we were
Yeah.
like out traveling to like whatever or taking a flight. Like we literally drove there, and I remember we went in and we like put on our masks and gloves and disinfected that literal
Yeah.
air. We were like spraying disinfectant everywhere. We like wiped down every single counter, every single doorknob, every literally everything. I think we left that place cleaner when we left than when we entered.
There was not a single corner in that Airbnb that we left untouched.
Yeah, with our disinfectant wipes.
Yeah.
Like not one.
Yep.
We brought our own sheets, we brought our own pillows, we brought our own everything. Like literally we didn't use a single one of their things.
Yeah.
So I think it's a little different because we really minimized who we were coming in contact with
Yeah.
outside of the three of us. And I think that that makes a big difference.
Before we go,
No,
the best way to end this.
literally know what you're doing. And I hate.
I'm in grade 12, and so I was a rest trip for our grad trip. Oh my god, like it was so much fun. Like I can't even like begin to explain.
It was so much fun. I'm dead, Nadine. I'm fudging dead.
Oh my god, that gets me every time. The line that like is the best is I'm coming back. First year of university. I'm coming back.
I lied. I was fake then and I'm fake now. I lied. I truly did. I lied. I don't know what else to tell you.